I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. And as always, I hope you enjoy the journey. In this episode, we're diving into a topic that's like a bad sequel to a movie that was terrible in the first place: the Russia-Georgia war and its echoes in Ukraine. The original war in 2008 was left as a frozen conflict. Meanwhile, a new installment is playing out, and it's called Ukraine, the sequel. It has just been 10 years since the fighters of the Georgian Legion stood on the side of Ukrainians against the Russian aggression. We will cover their history, how they have continued operating for so long, and what makes a fight for another country's land and people worthwhile. Let's take a look at our report to find out more.
In the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, foreign fighters have rallied to support Ukraine's defense against Moscow's forces. Among these volunteers, Georgians have emerged as a significant contingent, demonstrating their commitment to the cause.
It's a war for Georgians as well. I'm just a 22-year-old kid, and I feel that's the right thing to do. And we're gonna push Russians back. It's gonna take a day, month, or a year. It doesn't matter. We are on the right side of the history.
The Georgian Legion, a force composed of both ethnic Georgians and other foreign nationals, has been active in Ukraine since 2014. Its formation followed Russia's destabilization of the eastern Donbas region and the illegal annexation of Crimea. Initially an independent unit, the Georgian Legion eventually integrated into the armed forces of Ukraine. Despite their relatively small population of approximately 3.7 million, Georgians have borne a heavy toll in terms of casualties. As the conflict intensified, Georgian fighters found themselves at the forefront, risking their lives alongside Ukrainian troops. Their commitment to the cause transcended the national boundaries, driven by a belief in defending not only Ukraine, but also global peace and democracy.
And now, as always, it's time to take a look at the issue in greater detail. Now, you'd think after 15 years, Russia would have moved on from Georgia. But no, it's more like an ex who keeps showing up at your family gatherings, claiming they just came by to check on the dog. Yes, Russia, the dog is fine. You can stop sending troops to South Ossetia and Abkhazia. But today's story takes place somewhere other than the Caucasus, as we are talking about Russia's aggression against Ukraine in its 11th year now. The Georgians are far from just passive observers. They are starring in it. Hundreds of them, in fact, have traveled to Ukraine to join the Georgian Legion, a group of fighters with a passion for sticking it to the Russians. This isn't just about helping Ukraine. For many Georgians, it's personal. They have been here before, and they are determined to make sure history does not repeat itself. But of course, it wouldn't be a proper sequel without a charismatic leader to lead the charge. And that's where Mamuka Mamulashvili comes in. He's the kind of guy who wants on your side in battle and has even made it onto Russia's most wanted list. Yes, Russia put him on the list because, according to them, he has this crazy idea that Russia shouldn't invade other countries. The nerve of this guy, right? What's even more remarkable is that the Georgian Legion isn't just a bunch of guys with a vendetta. It's a diverse military unit with people from all over the world, united by the desire to fight for a common cause. And the fighters of the Legion played an important role ahead of Russia's full-scale attack in early 2022, training the society in guerrilla tactics. And now, here is the twist. While the Georgian population is largely supportive of their compatriots fighting in Ukraine, the Georgian government has taken a different approach. Georgian Dream Party chair Irakli Kobakidze warned that Georgian citizens fighting in Ukraine could lose their citizenship. It seems that Georgian Dream has a strange interpretation of support. But as we have covered on this program before, the current vision of the government in Tbilisi is far from that of the Georgian society. The friendship between these two nations, Ukraine and Georgia, will surely continue past the mark where they have to bear arms in order to ward off a common threat. So, what do we make of all this? Well, one thing's clear. Georgia's past isn't just haunting it, it's actively fighting back. And as the war in Ukraine rages on, it's no surprise that more Georgians are joining the fight. Because for them, it's not just about Ukraine, it's about unfinished business. And joining us here today is none other than Mamuka Mamulashvili himself, the founder and commander of the Georgian National Legion. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thank you for having me here again, and I'm happy to see you.
Good to see you again. So let us start with a bit of history. The Georgian National Legion is celebrating a decade of its existence, but your history with the military goes back even further than that. Can you tell us more about this, in particular, how you came to first experience the heat of battle at the age of 14?
Unfortunately, Georgia became the first country who Russia attacked after the collapse of former Soviet Union. And being 14, together with my father, General, I had to go to defend our country. And my father took me with his battalion to defend Georgia. And that's how I got firstly to the front line against Russian aggressors. After a year and a half of fighting, actually, we got in Russian captivity, and I had to be as a war captive for about 3 months. I stayed in Russian captivity, and I was exchanged as a military after 3 months. So actually, after that, I'm participating in different operations against Russian Federation, against terrorist state, and that was actually the reason why I started the Georgian Legion in 2014.
And when you actually got captured by the Russians, no doubt they were trying to spin a tale that, look, they don't have any fighting force, they have to recruit children to fight their wars. But it wasn't like that. You were not a child soldier. You were a person fighting for your beliefs, right? It was your personal choice to do that.
Georgia does not have that big human resources, for example, as Ukraine has. And unfortunately, even young guys had to join military. I was not the only one at that age. There were several more guys of that age who were fighting against Russian Federation, against occupier. And of course, it was ideological. My father was a military general, and he used to tell me that Russia is an enemy and we have to fight against it. So the main source of making the Georgian Legion is, of course, ideology. It is, of course, fighting against aggressor. And that was the beginning of Georgian Legion in my 14, actually.
So first, the Georgian Legion has been making the headlines for a while. Some people actually don't really understand what it is all about. Some people think it is some sort of autonomous war band composed just, of a handful of fighters, but it's not like that at all. Can you tell us more about the status of the Georgian National Legion and, the general information as to, how capable, and how powerful of a fighting force it really is? Of course, without giving away any sort of confidential numbers, because it is only natural that some things have to remain unsaid.
Okay, for today, Georgian Legion is the largest foreign formation in Ukraine. From 2014, Georgian Legion was a volunteer battalion. Due to the law that was adopted in the Parliament of Ukraine in 2016, all volunteer battalions, foreign volunteers, could become the part of the armed forces of Ukraine, and Georgian Legion was the first to become the official part of the armed forces of Ukraine, and also of a military intelligence of Ukraine. So today, Georgian Legion is an official part of the armed forces. Georgian Legion is specialized on front lines in special operations, reconnaissance, and different specifics that need special skills. Georgian Legion still recruits soldiers, but we are recruiting guys with special skills, with combat experience. And it's quite, difficult to get to the Georgian Legion if you have no military or combat experience.
And that's a very important point there, because again, people, when they think about volunteer formations, they have this romantic notion of just civilians all of a sudden going to a foreign land to take part in a war. But like you said, it's nothing like that at all. In fact, from the very start, Georgian Legion was actually composed of people with extensive combat experience, including those who have done, who have done time in Iraq, for example. Like, so veterans of these wars were also taking part in that.
Most of the guys participated in missions like Iraqi mission or Afghani mission, so they are experienced. They have great combat experience, and that's why Georgian Legion is regarded as one of the most experienced formations in Ukraine. We were professionals when we came to Ukraine in 2014. We were training Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian police forces and Ukrainian brigades and battalions. So from the very beginning in the Georgian Legion, we had only experienced combatants, and it is not a formation of civilians who ideologically want to stand with Ukraine. It's a professional forces that are doing one of the most sensitive jobs on a front line.
So in other words, it is a professional and highly skilled elite formation. Now, throughout this time, both in the Georgian Legion, but also, as you said before that, even when you were actually in Russian captivity, you had plenty of time to get to know the enemy. So when looking at this from this perspective, what would you say is the single worst or perhaps most dangerous thing about the Russians as a fighting force? A single feature that makes them the most dangerous in the battlefield and also beyond, because we should not forget about their capacity at using disinformation, for example. So what would that be? This single feature that you would, single out as one to watch out for?
Russian armed forces are not developing. Russian armed forces are remaining the same barbarian as they were from the beginning of their history. They are war criminals. They have nothing common with the modern world, and they hate everything modern, and they hate free people. That's the most important what we should know about the Russian forces. Unfortunately, I had to be, in touch with Russian aggression from my 14th, and I clearly understand their mentality. Those people are barbarians. Those peoples are totally undemocratic, non-democratic, and they are the holders of Russian world, if you know what I mean. It is one of the most terrible diseases of today's world. And today, Georgian Legion is fighting against that ideology. The ideology of killing, raping, and robbing neighbor countries. So it is quite a difficult job. I'm at it already 30 years, and I hope we are going to finish them in Ukraine, and this war is not going to spread further. So the main idea is for Georgian Legion, the main idea is compassion. We very well understand what Georgia went through in 90s, in 2008, and we do understand what Ukraine is going through now. That's why we are here. That's why Georgian Legion is the largest foreign formation. That's why all the professional foreigners are joining Georgian Legion. And we are going on our fight, and we're going to win this war very soon.
So speaking of compassion, the relentless brutality of the Russians is one thing, and perhaps this is one point that nobody really needs that much convincing. People have already learned what it is about. However, in Georgia itself, you have the support of ordinary people, but not the government. Can you tell us more about this? Because it seems like this is one of those situations where the government is really at odds with the general public. I mean, not the only one, when you're looking at the protests on the streets. However, this is really this glaring example that they don't really understand public sentiment at all.
We have a total support of Georgian society. We have total support of Georgian people. I would say more than 90% of Georgians support Georgian Legion and what we are doing in Ukraine. Georgian Legion, is a part of a Georgian society. We in Georgia, in Ukraine, and we are giving Ukrainians a sign that we are with them till the end, and Georgians will fight together with Ukrainians against occupier. Unfortunately, Georgia has a pro-Russian government that is against us, Russia could not occupy physically Georgia in 2008. They could not occupy us in 90s. From the very beginning, but they occupied our political power, and unfortunately Georgia has pro-Russian government in power that is against democracy actually. That's why we have a massive demonstration on Georgian streets. They are trying to adopt a Russian law about agents in a Georgian parliament, and of course Georgian society is against it. It gets Georgia out of democratic way, and that's why we have all the yes outside. They are standing in the streets and defending their rights. They are defending democracy. So, we as a part of Georgian society are also defending democracy, but in Ukraine.
So it is a powerful reminder that this struggle is not just taking place in the battlefield, but also it is taking place within the hallways of power on the streets, pretty much everywhere, because Russia, unfortunately, has this really long reach and can actually rule by proxy where it cannot succeed by force. Mamuka Mamulashvili was a very special guest today here on TVP World. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. And I certainly hope that one day we'll be able to talk about all this struggle, all this fight as something that already belongs in the past. And all that is left is celebrating victory.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we are going to finish Russia this summer.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, bringing you all the other stories from the East that you really don't want to miss. US President Joe Biden has signed a long-delayed military aid package hours after it was passed by the Senate. The bill provides for billions of US dollars in new spending to support Ukraine's fight against Russian forces.
On this vote, the yeas
The moment Ukraine has been waiting for has finally come. The US Congress approved a $61 billion aid package for Ukraine, ending months of political wrangling and opposition from far-right Republicans. Speaking from the White House, Biden emphasized that the package demonstrates unwavering support for Ukraine in its battle against invading Russian forces. Biden underscored that this investment is crucial not only for Ukraine's security, but also for Europe and the United States. He warned that if Ukraine fails, Putin's next step could be a direct attack on a NATO ally, necessitating a response from the international community. The aid package includes provisions for air defense munitions, artillery, rocket systems and armored vehicles. The legislation also calls for the delivery of much-anticipated long-range ATACMS missile systems.
Ukrainian ambassador to the United States Oksana Markarova has announced ongoing negotiations to localize the production of Patriot air defense systems within the country. This strategic move aims to bolster Ukraine's resilience against threats and ensure a robust defense infrastructure.
During a recent interview with Ukrainian TV broadcasters, Ambassador Markarova highlighted the feasibility of manufacturing Patriot systems or components domestically. The discussions, which have gained momentum since President Volodymyr Zelensky's last visit to the United States, involve not only US-made Patriot systems, but also other modern anti-air systems. While specific timeframes for the fruition of these partnerships remain undisclosed, the negotiations signify a proactive approach by Ukraine to secure its airspace and strengthen its defense capabilities in the face of ongoing challenges. The localization of Patriot system production aligns with Ukraine's long-term security goals and represents a pivotal step in the country's journey towards self-reliance and defense autonomy.
Russia and Ukraine have conducted their first ever in-person talks to exchange children displaced by the ongoing war. The talks were aimed at reuniting families torn apart by the conflict.
48 children are said to be exchanged under a deal agreed upon in Qatar. 29 will be returned to Ukraine, while 19 will return to Russia. However, no details were provided regarding why these children were in Russian hands or their origins. Qatar said it mediated the Russian-Ukrainian children's exchange in response to requests from Moscow and Kyiv to explore potential areas of cooperation. The fate of children has been highly sensitive in Ukraine since the war began 2 years ago. Some of them lost their parents, while others were separated from caregivers due to the fast-moving front lines during the initial invasion. Ukrainian authorities accuse Russia of illegally deporting these children to Russia and attempting to erase their Ukrainian identity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky previously described the situation as a genocide, claiming that around 20,000 children were forced to move to Russia since the invasion began. Russia, however, calls this figure fake and states that it dates back to the early period of Russia's invasion, when the front lines were constantly shifting.
In a recent decree, Patriarch Cyril of Moscow and all Russia has imposed a 3-year ban on priest Dmitry Safronov from serving in his office for praying at Alexei Navalny's grave. As part of the penalty, Father Dmitry is prohibited from conducting services, wearing a priestly cross and reciting the rosary.
Dmitry Safronov was among the priests who publicly called on the Russian authorities to release Navalny's body to his family. For his actions, Father Safronov has been reassigned to another church in Moscow, where he will serve as a psalmist and perform tasks assigned by the parish priest. In Ukraine, meanwhile, an Orthodox priest affiliated with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate has been sentenced to a lengthy prison term for espionage activities against Ukraine. The priest, whose identity remains undisclosed due to legal and safety considerations, was accused of leaking sensitive information regarding Ukrainian military checkpoints to Russian forces. President Volodymyr Zelensky has emphasized the need to prevent any entities influenced by the aggressor state from weakening Ukraine from within. Both cases are a stark reminder of the complex interplay between Russian Orthodox Church and politics of the Kremlin.
For this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.